Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Travel Collective and Your Photo Travel Guide. And today I'm talking to Beth, who's joining me from Kansas. And we're going to talk about Kansas, what there is to do out there, and ghost tours, something that's really fascinating to me. So, welcome, Beth.
Well, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So, have you always lived in Kansas? Tell me about
I
Kansas.
I have. I've lived in Kansas my whole life. Um, Within probably about a 60-mile radius, I went away to Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas, and that's the capital. And but I've lived in, Northeast Kansas my entire life.
I like the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa, so I just think there's a lot there that people kind of like overlook. But you've got the four seasons, you've got back roads and hidden little places. Just share a few of the places that you love to explore when you're not working.
Well, let's see. In Kansas, where I like to explore, the Flint Hills, which is like if you drive from Kansas City south to Wichita, you go through some beautiful Flint Hills, and they are truly amazing. It's rolling hills. A lot of people, you could almost imagine it being used on a cowboy set because it's
Oh,
just wide open. Uh, some fences, you might see some cows, you might not. So I think that's an incredibly beautiful drive. So whether you're driving to Manhattan, Kansas, which is about 90 minutes from Kansas City, or Wichita, which is, 2 or 2.5 hours south. It's really beautiful scenery. And yeah, if you're a Midwest girl, we're kind of jaded,
yeah.
and people refer to the Midwest as kind of flyover country, but I think it's beautiful, and I just can't imagine living anywhere else.
Ah, that's wonderful. So talk to me about what started the ghost tours.
Well, I always tell this story on my ghost tours because people are always asking me, how'd you get started in this?
Yeah.
So I would say it's probably been about 15 years ago. My sister and I, her birthday's in October, and she wanted to go on a ghost tour. Well, I had only heard about one city in the general area that had ghost tours, and that was Atchison, Kansas. So, 15 years ago was the Sally House. If you have any knowledge of that, it's a house in Atchison that allegedly has the spirit of a little girl, and a husband and wife lived there, and then they had a child, and the husband kept getting attacked, and they would see Sally. So
Oh,
it's just a very kind of nondescript small house in Atchison, Kansas, which is probably about, oh, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes to an hour north of here. And again, lots of winding roads to get there, but it's really beautiful. It's where Amelia Earhart's from. So if
oh,
you've heard of
really?
Atchison, Kansas, yeah, she was born there, and
Oh.
there's the Amelia Earhart Museum and things like that. So we went on that ghost tour. And first of all, it was billed as a trolley tour. So I'm thinking, okay, sounds kind of fun. So we get there and it's a school bus.
Huh.
So that was kind of my first disappointment. But it's not about how you get around, it's
Right.
truly, about the experience. So we got on, and the first thing I noticed was there was no tour guide, there was just the bus driver. And so we would, before the tour started, he had a tape recorder and he hit play, and they gave a little bit of information about Atchison, and then we drove somewhere and he stopped, and then he hit play again.
Oh.
So it was really disappointing, and I really didn't like it at all because a lot of the stops on that particular tour um, were people's houses. So
Oh.
here are these people, they're sitting on their front porch or unloading groceries, or their kiddos out riding the trike on the sidewalk, and a busload of people pull up in front of your house. People
Yeah.
are hanging out the window, taking pictures and things like that. And the guy that was the bus driver, he would play the tape recorder, and it'd say something like, "At this house, people hear footsteps in the hallway, but no one's there." And then he'd sit back down and you'd drive somewhere else. It was very anticlimactic. And I just remember on the way home, I told my sister, I said, I feel kind of ripped off.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
And
right.
it's all, it was put on by the city. So, of course, the money went to a good cause to
Oh, of
support,
course.
historic preservation and things like that. But I mean, all the stories that I saw and heard, I could read on their website.
Oh.
So it was really disappointing. So the very next day, again, we're still in October. The Kansas City paper used to come out on Sundays and have it was nice and thick. It had ads and
Yeah.
different sections, and there was a travel section that I always loved looking at. And there was a whole section about ghost tours in the Midwest. And I looked, and there was a company called Ghost Tours of Kansas. And
Oh.
guess what? There's all kinds of tours. I'd never heard of the company, and I'd never had any idea. So I got on their website, and it said, "We're hiring tour guides." Now, I was not looking for a part time job. I had a full time job, and I was not looking for a part time job. And I just thought, oh, I could do that, you
Yeah.
know? And so I contacted the company, and the next weekend they had tours in Lawrence, Kansas, so home of the KU Jayhawks. Also, kind of a pivotal part of the Civil War. It started
Oh.
there. There's a lot of historical information. 1863, there was a big raid, and some people from Missouri came over to Kansas and killed a bunch of Kansans there in Lawrence, about 200 men and boys. So a lot of history there. So, and I love history. I absolutely love
Yeah.
history.
Oh, I do
So I
too.
sat, they had they had such a huge crowd that they had an 8 o'clock tour and then a 10 o'clock tour.
Oh, wow.
So the 8 o'clock tour, I sat and I listened to the stories. And then the 10 o'clock tour, the owner of the company was on the bus and she said, "Do you want to tell a story or two?" So I said, "Sure." So I told a couple of stories. And then, the next year I started giving tours myself in Lawrence. And then Kansas City, Kansas, which is my hometown, that opened up. So I took that tour as well and started giving tours there. And I live in Shawnee, Kansas. And I told my ghost tour owner, I said, "Gosh, I don't mind driving to Lawrence, which is about a 25-minute drive, or Kansas City, Kansas, which is a 20-minute drive." I'm like, "Sure would be nice if we had one in Shawnee." So
Right.
we put one together. And that
Oh.
was a really great experience to put it together because anybody can Google ghosts in Shawnee, Kansas. You can get all kinds of crazy stuff. But we literally went door to door in downtown Shawnee and knocked on business doors, nobody's house. We knocked on business doors. And, when she told me that this is how we were going to do it, I'm like, I cannot just walk into
Yeah.
a business and ask, "Hey, do you guys have any ghosts?"
Right. Yeah.
But I
Exactly.
was amazed because there was this whole pocket of downtown Shawnee that, like, business after business after business after business had ghost stories.
Oh.
So that was fascinating. So then we did a little bit of research. And one of the things that I appreciate about our ghost tour company is that we have a paranormal team, and they'll go and do paranormal investigations. So not only do we have firsthand ghost stories from the people that have experienced them, we have the history of the area as far as why might ghostly activity happen here, and
Right.
then we have evidence collected from the paranormal investigations that our team do.
Oh.
So, and I always say every year, all my tours are different because you have different people. So, unlike the guy in Atchison that had a tape recorder, I didn't feel like I could ask him any questions because he was driving the bus and push and play, and that was the extent of his involvement.
Right.
And I there were questions I wanted to know about. So my tours are very interactive, and they're never the same and just always tons of fun.
Right. And there's probably people that you meet, maybe people that have lived in the community or people that come forward and say, "Oh, well, this happened," or "I know what happened before that building was built," you
Yep,
know?
absolutely. In downtown Shawnee, um, there's a business that's been there probably as long as I can remember. I've lived in Shawnee for the past 30 years. And I think it's been there as long as I can remember. And it's called, well, I won't say what it's called, but
Okay.
it's a doll repair store. So you can go in there and
Interesting.
you can buy American Girl dolls. You can buy current dolls, but if you have an old antique doll that belonged to your mom or your grandmother, and maybe, it's getting threadbare on some of
Yeah.
it or needs a new wig or something like that, you can take those there and you can they'll work on them and fix them up for you. So that building is at the end of a street where we had, like I said, ghost story after ghost story after ghost story after ghost story. And we get there and we're like, oh man, there's old dolls in there. She's
Yes.
going to have all kinds of crazy stuff. And we walked in and she started yelling and screaming and ghosts are bad and no, 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 no. And she threw us out of her store.
Oh, wow.
So we got outside and the owner, she looked at me and she said, not only does she have ghosts, but she's afraid.
Yes.
She's afraid. So our tours are in downtown Shawnee or after her store closes. And one of the things that I like to do there is I take dowsing rods
Mm-hmm.
and I show people how to use them. So they're just metal rods and they cross. If the answer, you have to ask yes or no questions. They
Right.
cross, it means yes. If they go out, it means no.
Oh,
So we always do divining rod sessions there. I let people play with them. But yeah, I mean, I've had people on the tours uh, give me good stories to go along with that. On one of my tours, I had a gal say that she was in there shopping and she was looking for something for her daughter. And she said she walked by dollhouse furniture,
right.
just small
Yeah.
little dollhouse furniture. And she said a piece fell off the shelf onto the floor in front of her. So she picked it up and she continued to walk around the store. And then she walked by that shelf again and the same thing happened.
Oh.
So she took it home. Now, me, I would have left it.
I think I would have left it. I'm like,
I am not interested in anything coming home with
yes,
me
thank you.
or anything like that.
I have a
But she
respect for.
absolutely. But she brought it home and she, didn't have any ghostly experiences. So it's just kind of unusual that it was that same piece that, wanted to get her attention or something in the
Yeah,
store wanted to get that attention.
right.
So
Something wanted to make itself known to her.
for sure, for sure. And I've had several really unique pictures taken
Yes.
on my tours. And one of them was actually in that doll repair store from the outside. I stand outside with my back to the window of the store and let people kind of look in, and people were taking pictures. And my husband was with me. It was kind of a big tour, and one of his coworkers was on the tour. So they hopped off the bus first, and I mean, either the first one off or the last one off, just to make sure
Yes.
everybody, you want to get off. If you're uncomfortable, please stay on the bus. You want to get out, this is our stop. So they get out, and she started taking pictures. And one of her pictures is super creepy. I've never seen anything like it before. It's it's a hand, but it's the outline of a hand that's glowing green.
Whoa.
Now, if I wouldn't have been there when she took it, I would think, oh, there's like a handprint on the glass of the window
Right.
and
Yeah.
maybe the flash or a light or
Right.
something. But you could see like the fingernails, you could see the creases. So it was almost like somebody was standing over her and did like this.
Oh my goodness.
And so that was really creepy.
That is
That was,
really creepy.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, we get some unusual things happening on our tours.
And that's amazing in a way that it happened while you've got people with you or they're taking these pictures. Especially with
Yes,
digital photography, I think. I mean, the cameras can definitely see more than our naked eye. So I'm always
yes.
amazed at what, you point at a camera even in like a cemetery or something. It picks up things that we're not seeing. So,
Yeah. In one night in Lawrence, I had a gentleman get a full body apparition photo in a cemetery.
oh my goodness.
So yeah, that was pretty impressive because he came on the tour and he had, and this has probably been, I don't know, at least 10 years ago. So maybe, 12 or 13 years ago. So the technology was different then than it is now. I mean,
Oh,
now everything's
definitely.
small. He had a camera and it had like a long lens, and he brought his tripod and all this stuff. And I was joking with him. I'm like, man, I can tell you were serious about getting some ghost pictures. So we got to a cemetery in Lawrence, and I always go in first and I faced the crowd. And he was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet from me, and he got his tripod set up, and there was no one in the cemetery, and it was dark. And
Right.
you could see the lights from the streets and things like that. So it was safe to go in there, but you could also tell there was no one there. And he was there, and I could hear click, 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 click. And so after I kind of gave some information and history about that cemetery, then he called me over and he said, "Look at this." And you could see there was a full body apparition. And you could tell, like, the gentleman had boots and he had hats, and he was kind of mid stride, like his body is here, and you
Right.
could see the split in his leg, but you could see through his torso. You
Oh
could
my
see
goodness.
behind it. So, yeah, we've had some really interesting pictures and occurrences happen on my tours.
Oh my goodness. Do you
And that's
sometimes?
another reason why there no two tours are the same.
Oh no, of course not. No, not at all. I mean, different people, different places. I mean, it's just kind of like nature itself. I mean, if you go out and see the leaves change, no 2 days are going to be the same. So,
Right on. Yes, absolutely.
do you get ever get a customer though that you can tell like they just are, I don't know, kind of a troublemaker, like they don't believe, you know? So,
Yeah, occasionally, and it's kind of funny because usually the women, us women, I think we're more open. So it's usually like a boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband and wife. And it's like, come on, honey, this is what we're gonna do. So the guys like get drugged there almost against their
yes.
will.
Yeah.
Um, but by the end of the evening, they're like, now what other cities do you give tours in? And what about this? And so they get really involved and really kind of integrated in the conversations really quickly. So that's always fun. And it's always, I don't know, it's almost like one of the most sincere forms of flattery because we have kind of groupies. So
Oh,
people that
right.
go like, now where else do you go? Okay, so next week I'll see you in this city. So, that feels good because they obviously enjoyed the one they went on, and then they want to try something different as well.
Oh, exactly. And they know that you're probably always constantly looking for news stories, digging through old newspapers, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Because it's kind of
Absolutely.
that combination of like what's happening today and why people might be hearing or seeing something paired with, now what really happened at this spot years and years ago.
Right. And that's one of the really interesting things about Lawrence, Kansas is that raid in August of
Yeah.
1863 that happened. When I was reading old newspapers and it said, so the gentleman that came, I shouldn't call him a gentleman, the thug really,
Right.
that came from Missouri and raided Kansas in Lawrence, he set up that raid. Um, he brought like 200 men on horseback. So they rode horseback, up to 100 miles. And some of them had to like tie themselves on to their horse because, if you're riding with a bunch of
Oh
people and
gosh.
you are riding 100 miles, you're going to get tired. If you kind of nod off and slide off your horse, you're going to be trampled to death.
Oh yeah, you're done.
Yeah. So when I read this article, it talked about that. And it also said that the Raiders came into downtown Lawrence like water running over a rock. So to me, that just was a very visual thing that I could just see everyone just spreading out and burning houses and killing all the men and all the boys that they could find.
Wow. How, just tragic and traumatic for that town at
It
that
is.
time.
It is. It really left a deep scar on Lawrence. And, our tour headquarters in Lawrence is a haunted hotel. So it's the Eldridge Hotel. And it's also tied to that raid as well.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, we feel like a lot of the spirits that are around town, are left over from that particular raid.
Right. Do you remember as a child having like that extra sense of sensing things that you couldn't explain?
I personally have never been that way. I've always been interested. I mean, into, junior high, I can
Yeah.
remember being interested in like the Loch Ness Monster and UFOs and, ghosts and that kind of thing. But thankfully, I like to say I haven't had any experiences. I've had a near death experience. And then I did see a couple of spirits in my hotel room when my husband and I were in Sedona, Arizona a few
Oh,
years ago.
wow.
So yeah, but yeah, I'm not the type of person that sees spirits or feels things, or, feels like I'm being watched, or there's something around. I don't feel that. My husband can. My husband can. So I always appreciate when he can go with me on tours.
Yes.
He helps make sure, I always say that we don't leave somebody in a cemetery
Right.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
if we have a full bus of 40 to 50 people, you
Yeah.
just got to make sure that, all your little kiddos make it back on the bus and we don't leave somebody somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So that place in Sedona, did you know going in that it was supposedly haunted or
Well, I don't know that it was really alleged to be haunted, but Sedona has the vortexes,
right.
the energy vortexes, and things like that. And it seemed like there were a lot of stores in downtown Sedona that had the different crystals and that type of thing, stones that have different healing powers, and that kind of thing. So I didn't. We go to a lot of haunted locations. We've been to Salem. We went to the Villisca Axe Murder House. You may know that one. It's
Yeah, I
in
do. Yeah, in
Villisca,
Iowa. Yes.
Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we've been to the Lizzie Borden House. So we like going to haunted locations, but I've never seen anything or felt anything. So I don't know if I'm just not in tune, but I love kind of the science and the history. That's
Yeah.
something that really intrigues me. And I love telling the story,
Yeah.
and I also enjoy when people are like, I've lived in Shawnee my whole life and I had no idea this cemetery was here.
Oh,
Or
really?
yeah, yeah. So it's a lot of fun, and I definitely enjoy it. I'm always really excited when October rolls around, because I know what I'm going to be doing every Friday and Saturday night, and then but by the end of the month I'm kind of glad to know that it's over, generally for a year. Our company, we do give private tours and group tours and things like that, but mainly it's during
Yeah,
October when people
October.
think about ghosts and looking for ghost tours. So
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, they may add some, other times of the year, like you said, if you have a group coming in or something like that. But
right, yeah, our website is Ghost Tours of Kansas. Oh no, it's .com or .org. I can't remember. I think it's .org.
yeah, I think
Um,
it's .org, and I'm going to be
okay.
sure to put it in the show notes too for everyone. But yeah, I think it's
And you'll see a
.org.
picture of that green glowing hand.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I'm kind of like you though. I kind of like I don't feel or sense things. I'm more interested in the history and maybe what happened that there potentially could be something there for someone that does have that extra. I'm almost
yeah,
glad if I stay in a haunted hotel and nothing happens.
yeah. Now I did stay in a haunted hotel in December in Bisbee, Arizona,
Oh.
and something grabbed my foot in the middle of the night.
Oh my
It grabbed
gosh.
my foot and it just clamped down 3 or 4 times. And I looked, I didn't see anything, so it didn't bother me.
Right. You're like,
It
oh
didn't bother
well, I
me.
don't know.
Yeah,
Bisbee
yeah.
is a really interesting town though in Arizona.
We took the ghost tour there, and it was a walking tour all around town. So that was probably one of the better ghost tours that I've taken, probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, I like, and then the town itself is just the way it's built on the side of the mountain there and the road to get up there. It just
Yep.
kind of lends it, and it feels like the buildings are kind of half hanging on, like they're wood
Yeah.
and they're going to fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the mine is right across the street, and, it's got ghosts in there because people died in there. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was, we did that last year, and that was a good experience. So, like I said, and again, I think it goes back because we had a great tour guide.
Yes.
Like, I think a tour guide can either make or break your tour.
Oh,
Because
most definitely.
yeah, because that same trip we did a ghost tour in Phoenix, and the tour guide was awful,
Oh no.
awful. The stories were good, but the tour itself was not. And I review a lot of attractions that I go to and hotels that I stay on TripAdvisor. And I just hardly ever, I mean, I've done hundreds and hundreds of reviews. I've maybe only given really low scores to maybe 4 or 5, but that was one that it's like, yeah, it was not good at all.
Oh no. Yeah.
So
And like you said, a lot of it goes to the guide. They need to be passionate. They need to be
yeah,
engaged. And if they're not really engaged, it's like, please go do something else.
yeah, yeah, and he was late showing up, and
Oh no.
it just started off on a bad foot. So, and it never got any better.
Oh dear. So talk about Salem a little, because that's a popular location in October, but the town itself can get really, really busy.
Yeah, my husband and I actually went in August, uh, 6 years ago. So that was, we went to Maine, and then we like went through all the, I call them like the little states, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we went to the Lizzie Borden house and took a tour there. And then we spent the night in Salem. And I didn't know it. I should have assumed, but we actually stayed in a haunted hotel right across the
Oh.
street from the Salem witch trial building, where
Right,
they have
right.
reenactments and figurines and things like that. So I was amazed because Kansas didn't become a state until 1859, I think, and there were houses there. First of all, the alleyways and the streets are super narrow because, of course, they didn't have big cars then,
Right.
didn't have 2 lanes of traffic. Maybe they had a horse, maybe they had a cart,
Right.
something like that. But just to walk in those narrow alleyways and see on the side of buildings that would say, Public Meeting House, 1849, built 8 or 1649.
16 and 17. Yeah.
1649, yes. That was just amazing to think. That was, like 200 plus years before Kansas was even a state.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so we really enjoyed that, and just really exploring on our own. We went to the old cemetery there that has some of the Salem witch trial people associated with it, like the judge and things like that. So just to see that old stuff was
Yes.
just pretty much mind blowing.
Yeah, especially in the United States, it is one of the oldest places where we've had settlers and inhabitants. I mean, we know the Midwest, we had Native Americans and people, but they didn't leave like structures, things that we could really see or
Right.
step into as such. I mean, occasionally in the Midwest, they're still finding like, burial grounds for Native Americans, but still
Sure.
it's not easy to kind of, and they were nomadic, I think. A lot of the American Indian tribes were more nomadic, so they were moving. They weren't
Yep.
as
Pick up and
settling.
move with the buffalo.
Right. But Shawnee has kind of and Kansas itself has a little bit of that Wild West element as well.
Yep. Definitely. Well, Bill Hickok was a marshal here in Shawnee.
Oh, really?
Yep. Yep. One of his wives, he was married a few times. One of his wives is actually buried at a cemetery not far from my house.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of Wild West history here. Um, Jesse and Frank James live not far from here, up in Kearney, Missouri, and they actually raided the Shawnee area in 1861 or 1862 before the raid in Lawrence, and they brought the Cole Younger brothers too.
Oh,
So it literally was the Wild West here.
yeah. Are there other festivals and things that happen in Kansas in October that people could come to Kansas in, say, autumn, October, and do a few things?
I'm sure there are. Uh,
Yeah, I
like I
should look. I'll have to look and
y-
see.
yeah, for me, October, I just know I make no plans to do anything because I know I'm going to be giving a tour somewhere, and so I don't get to do a lot of fun things in October other than give tours. It's just
Right,
something that I definitely enjoy.
right, exactly. But it is, it's like night after night, I'm sure, of like 1 to 2 tours, I'm sure.
In different cities. So, and COVID really, it really wreaked havoc on tour companies
Yes.
because you can't socially distance on a bus.
No.
If you do, then you haven't made enough money to pay for the bus.
Right.
So we had to really adjust our tours, And that's when I developed the downtown Shawnee walking tour.
Oh,
So we
perfect.
literally only walk maybe 3 to 4 blocks out and back, but it's a full hour because there's so many. That's the little pocket where it's, business after business after
Yes.
business after business that has great ghost stories that we've collected. And then also, our paranormal team has done investigations there as well. So I get to present their evidence and what they found.
Oh, interesting. And then you mentioned the hotel. Is that hotel actually open for people to stay in if they want, or it's
So
just a
that
business?
particular hotel is in Lawrence, and it's called the Eldridge Hotel, and it is open for business, and people do stay there. October is seems to be a busy month because I think it's homecoming for
Oh,
KU and then like parents weekend or something. So, before we go there, we always, make sure that we know what's going on and things like that. At the Eldridge, they actually keep a notebook in at their front desk when you check
oh,
in of all the ghost stories because sometimes people know that the Eldridge is haunted and sometimes they don't. So they'll come down and say, something really weird happened in my room last night, and
right.
then they would tell their story. So when I go to Lawrence, the first thing I do is I'm like, hey, it's Beth, I'm here, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll get the notebook and I'll look to see if there's any new stories because, again, we just build our stories the longer we do tours. And, they're always fresh stories and new stories. And it adds a lot of, I don't know, I think even if you take the tour last year, it's going to be
Yes.
different this year.
Yeah, I agree. Because, like you mentioned too, we're always finding new information about, oh, so and so lived here and they were part of this history with that. So I do
Right.
think it changes.
Right. Yeah, new ghost stories, new pictures that people have taken. Um, yeah, a lot of really interesting things.
So now that you do the walking tour, how big are the tour groups? Because that can be a little bit hard to manage too when they get too big.
We try to keep them, I try to keep them uh around 15 because I mean, I have a bullhorn that I can use, you know, but I always say I just use my obnoxiously loud mom voice
Yeah.
and everybody can hear me. So there's no problem there. So yeah, usually around 15, and that seems to be a good size because we can all cross the street at the same time,
Yes.
and it's kind of easy to tell if we're missing a couple or something like that. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense. So
yeah, and
how
if there's a big interest, then I can do a tour like at 7, and then one at 8:30, and then one at 10.
Yeah, that's true. And definitely in October, like I always tell people, it gets darker earlier, like 6:30ish sometimes.
It does, and it gets cold,
Yes.
right? You never know. It's either going to be really, really ungodly hot, and you're just going to be a big sweat ball, or you're going to be bundled up with gloves and a coat on.
Right, right, exactly. But that's what gives that feeling of autumn and fall and all of
And
that.
ghosts.
And ghosts, exactly. How far in advance do you usually recommend people book if they've got a group of people that would like to come?
Well, we also do private tours.
Oh, good.
Yeah, yeah. And so I've done private tours for just like a couple. It's like, oh, we're celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary.
Oh,
Want to do a ghost
nice.
tour?
Yeah.
So, I'll do things like that. One of my tours in Lawrence, it was a first date, and a guy had driven down from Omaha
Oh
to
my
Lawrence
gosh.
to meet a girl, and they wanted a private ghost tour. So, we do that. I've also given tours. I don't watch the TV show Supernatural.
No, I don't
I
either.
never I never got into that. Surprisingly, I haven't.
Right.
Um, but I guess that television show actually takes place in Lawrence, Kansas.
Oh,
So a couple
really?
of the characters are from Lawrence, Kansas. So they had a supernatural television show convention in
Oh,
Lawrence, and then they booked a ghost tour. So I've had groups like that that come to town, and they're looking for, something to do, basically to, keep the underage kids out of the bars.
Right,
So
exactly. Yeah.
and you really do learn a lot about the history of the area, because we always say that if you don't have history and you don't know what that history is, you're not going to have haunts,
Right.
because something had to take place in order for the ghosts and the spirits to either remain or come back to that area.
Yeah, exactly.
So as far as when to book, obviously I've had tours booked a year in advance, just to
Oh
make
wow.
sure you know we have a bus that we can reserve, as well as my time, because this is just a part-time fun thing for me. This is not my full-time job at all.
Right.
So yeah, the farther out the better. And sometimes our tours sell out, because if we have a bus, we have a finite number of seats.
Exactly. It can only hold that many.
Exactly. And if it's a walking tour, I don't want to have 30 people on a walking tour.
No, I don't
So,
either. It's just too many because, the poor people at the back and then waiting and to be able to tell the story so it's, everyone can hear and be engaged.
right. So, again, however many people I feel comfortable with is kind of the number that we use. And we
So
also have tours. The owner of the company, her name's Kathy, and she gives tours in Topeka. I think there's 3 different tours in
I was just
Topeka,
gonna
Kansas.
ask, like, you've mentioned Shawnee, and there was the other towns too. So it's
Kansas City, Kansas, and Lawrence are tours that I give.
right, and then she does Topeka.
She does Topeka. And like I said, there's 3 different tours in Topeka. One of them is I can't remember if it's a downtown Topeka around the capital area. And then there's also a North Topeka walking tour that she gives as well.
Oh, interesting.
And and she's a ghost hunter.
Oh, she
She's a ghost.
is.
She's done hundreds of paranormal
Oh
investigations.
my
And
goodness.
I don't do that. I am not into, I don't want anything touching me. I don't want anything coming home with me. I love doing the research and compiling the tour information and talking to our guests. But when they do investigations there, they'll do it. There's a historic hotel in downtown Topeka that they like to do investigations at. And it's like, no, I'm not interested in
Yeah,
doing
you're
that.
like, no, I don't want to.
See, in my heart, I'm a big fat chicken. I really am. I'm a big fat chicken.
No, that's how I feel. It's like I'm curious, but I don't want to be like disrupted. I don't want anything tapping at me or,
No, no. And I really do believe that things can follow you home and things like that. I was sick during the ghost tour season in 2010, and my husband actually did a tour for me in Lawrence. And he came home, and I was on the couch, and I said, "How'd things go?" He said, "You're not going to believe what happened." So one of our tour stops in Lawrence is a children's cemetery
oh,
on a Native American college. So Haskell University is where the government, I think it was 1850 or 1870, they collected all the children from the Native American families and put them at this school to teach them how to be white,
right.
right? To
Right.
Christianize them, so they couldn't speak their native language. They couldn't go by their given Native American name. And they also hadn't been exposed to a lot of, the white man's diseases.
Yeah,
So a
exactly.
lot of them died. So there's a cemetery that has all the children buried at, and that's one of the stops that we go to. And we're on the university property, and we're always, that's one of the things I always say before we get out at that stop is, you know, be respectful. It's surrounded by a fence. Do not go in the fence.
Right.
You can take pictures, and then we get down and I tell the stories and that kind of thing. And people take pictures. There's an old cedar tree that has beads and little dream catchers
Oh,
hanging from it. And then there's dolls and toys that people, kind of offerings that people have left.
right.
And so my husband had the group that time, and I was going through cancer treatments.
Oh,
So he came home and he said, we were at the cemetery, and he said he was talking to a guy who was right next to him. And people kind of lean through the fence and take pictures. And he said that there was a wolf-like creature with red eyes that was like this,
Ooh.
leaping at the picture. And he said there was nothing there.
Right,
There was
right.
nothing there. He was just like taking random pictures. And then he saw that one.
Oh,
And so I asked my husband, I said, so, did he send it to you? And he said, Beth, whatever that was, we do not need to have that in our house.
thank you.
With
Yes,
you,
thank
yeah,
you.
with you being sick, I was going through chemo and surgeries and stuff. And he's like, whatever it was, we didn't need to have it. So our team also has a couple of psychics that we work with.
Oh,
So when I saw our psychic, I asked her, I'm like, what was this? And, she said it was just, it was nothing to be afraid of. It was just, like something was there protecting the children.
oh, interesting.
So
Like
yeah,
that makes
yeah,
me feel better a little bit. Like,
I know.
right. Like it
I
was just
know.
like nobody needs to come in here. These souls are resting, let them be kind of thing. That's better
Yeah,
than, a tormented thing, person, whatever it
yeah,
was. Yeah.
yeah. Well, when Ghost Tours of Kansas first started, it was owned by two sisters, and one of the sisters' names was Beth.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, Beth and Kathy. Kathy is the current full owner, but Beth was kind of teaching me the Lawrence script and everything. So I would go on tours and we would trade off telling stories. And she told a story about how she felt that she had an attachment. And so she talked to the psychic that's on our staff, and she said, well, you have a little girl that's attached to you, and you picked her up at the cemetery, the
Oh,
children's cemetery.
right, right.
And she's like, okay, well, I don't need to have her attached. She can go wherever. And our psychic just said that she just wants to thank you for telling the stories and
Oh,
for keeping their story alive, because it's a terrible and tragic
yeah, it
story.
is a terrible, tragic story. We can only all imagine if our own children were taken from us.
By
And
the government,
yes,
because
right,
they know best.
exactly. But I mean that, that all the feelings for both sides, the parents, the children being alone and scared and frightened, and
Yes,
we need this history to be told in many cases.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Beth kept finding pennies everywhere in her house and just in random places, and they were always heads up.
Oh,
And she lived by herself. She wasn't married, and her daughter was grown and out of the house, and she'd just randomly find a penny like right in the middle of the doorway or on the dining room table. It's like if you have kids, you'd
right.
find all kinds of crazy stuff, but she didn't. And that's why one of the reasons why she thought she might have an attachment. So she didn't tell me this story, and she was telling it when we got to the children's cemetery in Lawrence. And then at the end of the evening, we got off the bus and she got out first. And I was right behind her, and she's like, look at that. There was a penny, heads up, right at the foot of the stairs. And
Whoa,
that was the last one. That was the last one she found.
interesting.
So yeah, it was really kind of a creepy story. But as soon as she found out that it was just a little girl who wanted to thank her for telling the stories and
Yeah.
being respectful and that kind of thing. So
And that's interesting then that she was able to, like, once she realized that, it's almost like the little girl went back or was able to
yeah. Yeah, and
go
she just
back.
put like a period at the end of that sentence, right? Like one
Yeah,
more for you. One more
right.
for you.
Exactly. Oh, interesting.
I
Wow.
think my favorite stop in the Lawrence tour is there's a fraternity at KU called Sigma Nu. And it's on the front of the Haunted Lawrence book that I collaborated
Oh, you got
with.
to collaborate on a book. That's right.
Yes, yes, it's called Haunted Lawrence. It's available at Amazon, and it has a picture of the Sigma Nu fraternity right on front of it. And it's an old plantation that in the 1920s got deeded over to the Sigma Nu fraternity. And there are a lot of spirits in there, but the main spirit that is there is one of the housemaids that had an affair with, at that time, he was the governor of the state of Kansas. So Roscoe Stubbs was his name. And they had a little fling, and she was quite young. And he went to Topeka to take care of governor work. And when he came back, his wife was rocking back and forth in a rocking chair, and she was in an agitated state. And he went to find, to walk around the house, and he found Virginia, which was the young maid that he
Oh
was in
no.
love with, hanging from the third floor in the ballroom.
Oh my
So
God.
now that third floor room is one of the sleeping rooms.
Oh.
So Virginia has made her presence known in multiple ways over the years. And, I think that it gives a lot of credence when the guys come and tell the stories, because they aren't joking around. They're not like, yeah, one time, ha ha ha. You can tell that something has happened to them.
Right. Yeah,
We
exactly.
we've had people see Virginia. She has long brown wavy hair and like a pinafore on. And we've had sightings of her. We've had lights go on and off. That's another location where our team did a paranormal investigation during the summer when the fraternity guys were not there.
Right.
And so that was interesting to be part of that. And another time during that year that I wasn't able to give tours, my husband said that the guys were having a fraternity party there. It was on Halloween, or a Halloween
Right.
party.
Exactly.
And so they had, girls and guys and, lots of drinking and things like that. No problem. And he said when the bus pulled up, a bunch of guys walked out and they had the Ghostbuster outfits
Oh,
on,
right. Yeah.
and they started playing Ghostbuster music. And then they had somebody dressed as Virginia walk walk through, and then they put her with the ectoplasm and stuff, ha 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 ha, isn't that funny? So there was an 8 o'clock tour, and then there was a 10 o'clock tour. So that happened at the 8 o'clock tour. By the time the 10 o'clock tour came around, my husband's like, okay, now something might happen. We don't know. And nothing happened. And he thought, well, they just got,
Yeah.
doing other things. And,
Right.
they had their look, they
They
had their
had their
jokes.
laughs. Yeah, they had
They
their
did. They did. So the next year when I was giving tours, I was telling that story. And the guys always come and they're like listening to the stories
yeah.
on this big stairway or around the corner where I can't see them and stuff. And one of the guys told me, he said, "Do you know why there was no 10 o'clock show?" I said, "Why?" And he said, um, they came inside, and one of the girls, the date, said there was a beer bottle sitting on the mantle. And she made the comment like, "Virginia, if you're real, give us a sign." And the beer bottle exploded.
Oh my gosh.
And they're like, "Yeah, we're done. We're not messing with Virginia
Yeah.
anymore. This is
Nope.
not funny. We're
Right.
done."
Right.
So there's a lot of really interesting stories like that. Um,
And like you
and
said,
I
just that happening and the truth, the guys realize like, hey, yeah, we're not messing with this energy, whatever it is.
Yeah,
It's not funny.
there's sightings every year. And
People
like I
people
said,
have been, murders and horrible things. No
yeah,
wonder they're traumatized.
yeah. Well, and going to the Sigma Nu fraternity, it's private property. So I try to let them know ahead of time and get the all clear. And sometimes they have something going on and we don't go in, and we just tell the stories from the outside
Right.
of the building. And it's you never know what to expect. One time I went in and like, okay, I'll be here, and the guy was there. He let me in, and a bunch of guys walked downstairs, and they didn't have any clothes on except for they all had white towels wrapped around their waist.
Right.
It's a fraternity
It's
house.
that's for I
You
was
never
just
know
gonna
what's going to
say,
happen.
right, these are frat guys that are yeah, it's like that's just what they're gonna do.
Exactly, exactly.
So, well, this has been fascinating, Beth. Thank you so much for sharing everything. Tell us again where we can book the tours. We can find out more about the book that you've co-written. Share all of that.
So I was a contributing, I contributed pictures and stories, and I also wrote the introduction, which is several pages long, and it's called Haunted Lawrence, and is available on Amazon. Also available in bookstores in Lawrence, Kansas, if anybody
Yay!
happens to be there at the Raven. We actually did a book signing there
Oh,
when it was
nice.
first released, so that was fun. And then if you want to book a tour of any of our cities in Kansas, it's ghosttoursofkansas.org. Is
Great.
that right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. It used to be .com and then it was org or it was org and now it's .com. So it's .org. So we'd love to have people come and I have even more stories to share.
Oh,
I
I'm
didn't share all
sure.
my
No, you can't
stories.
share all the stories.
No,
You
and I
gotta
have
go and meet
pictures
Beth.
and we have the
Yes.
dowsing rods. So it's a lot of fun.
It's a great way to spend time in the Midwest. I love that. Autumn is, I think, October at any university campus is great. The campuses themselves are beautiful. There's lots of
Yes,
activities and events, and just go and be a part of it. I love
absolutely.
that. So,
So come and join me.
yes, I know I got to go and meet you, Beth. This is fabulous.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Okay. You bet, April. Talk to you later.